For the longest time, I've been using this Canon EOS M50 as my first camera for everything. Whether it's for casual photography or YouTube videos, this camera has never let me down. But after all these years, I've finally decided it's time to move on. I want to share with you guys my experience going for this Canon EOS M50, which is arguably the most common camera for beginners, to my new Sony A6700. If you're just starting your journey as a content creator, then you most likely would have came across this Canon EOS M50. This camera was about $700 Australian when I first bought it, and for what it's worth, it's a really great value for beginners. The camera came with a 15 to 45mm kit lens, which means you're pretty much good to go right from the box. You can just switch to auto and start recording, which I guess that's why it's really appealing to beginners. I won't go into specifics for the specs, but generally as a content creator, I was more interested in the ability to shoot high quality videos, a bit of customizations in the settings here and there, and the option to swap out lens. I have to admit that I'm not really a camera expert, so I wasn't really concerned with the specific details at this point in time. The Canon EOS M50 has an EFM mount which allows me to swap out to either a wide angle lens or a prime lens like the Sigma 16mm f1.4. I absolutely love this Sigma lens because it creates a natural bokeh, which is like a blur in the background. I picked up this lens for about $500 on Amazon and it's worth every penny. Seriously, for anyone that's starting off YouTube that's creating like a talking head video, I highly recommend getting this lens. So with all that said, why am I ditching this camera? Well, for starters, I've been using this camera for a couple of years now and it's getting quite old, so I've been meaning to upgrade anyway. But one of the important features which was missing from the Canon was the ability to shoot in S-Log 3. For those who don't know, shooting in S-Log 3 format in a nutshell allows you to capture more information in the picture, so when we do some color grading post-production, we're able to have more dynamic range and control when editing. Just to give you guys an idea of the differences, under the same lighting conditions, we have the Canon here on the left on automatic setting. On the right here, we have the Sony A6700 shooting in S-Log 3. Right away, you might be thinking, there's not a lot of color in S-Log 3, but when we start applying some color grading, it creates a more vibrant picture. Well, at least according to my eyes. Another limitation with the Canon was shooting in 4K. Yes, I know, a lot of people say there's no point in shooting 4K for YouTube videos, but who doesn't want to have the luxury to shoot in 4K? The Canon allows you to shoot in 4K, but there's a crop factor. That means that when you're doing a video recording, you're quite zoomed in. If you're shooting in a smaller space like how I am on a desk, this is not ideal. And that leads me to the next reason why I upgraded to the Sony, the lens options. Canon first introduced the EOS M system back in 2021, but as of October last year, they quietly discontinued it. That means the EFM lenses which the Canon EOS M50 uses has also come to an end. To be honest, unless you're a hardcore camera person, it doesn't really affect the average consumer. But having the reassurance of the continuous camera lens support from Sony is something to future-proof yourself with. I know some of you guys might think that we can just use an adapter for the Canon EFM mount, but they're not that cheap either. So instead of putting a band-aid solution on a discontinued product, I thought getting this Sony A6700 solved the problem entirely and future-proofed me for the next 5 years at least. Alright, so now that I've talked about why I upgraded from the Canon M50, let's talk about my experience so far with the Sony A6700. I gotta admit that I've mainly used this camera for talking head videos and a couple of times for spontaneous outdoor photography and videography. So before I bought this camera, I was researching on a lot of things I should be expecting. One of the most common complaints was overheating. Like seriously bad overheating. To the point where people were suggesting to buy a fan to stick it on the camera so they can cool it. This was very concerning to me at the time, but my experience with it so far was actually quite positive. Just to point out, the camera is almost always indoor, sitting on a stand, but there is still some overheating in a way. I usually take about under half an hour to record a video in 4K 24p, and after each session, the temperature will get kinda warm, hot-ish. It's like you can touch it, but if you leave your finger on it long enough, it gets hotter and hotter and hotter. I don't think it gets hot enough where I need to buy an external fan, so I guess that's good. Another thing that didn't really work that well for me is the location of the mic and the streaming ports. If I flip the camera screen over, I can see the audio level up the top left, which allows me to adjust the levels easily if my mic's volume is too high or too low. The problem is, if I plug in the mic and the USB-C into the ports, it blocks off the top part of the screen entirely. So what I have to do as a quick workaround is to flip the screen so it's inverted. Then I can see the volume levels down below. Definitely not a nice solution. Besides that problem, I don't really have any other concerns with this Sony A6700. This camera is jam-packed with a lot of features. Features like an AI processing unit which enhances the autofocus system to improve subject recognition. Usually a normal camera would lose the eye tracking when your eyes move out of frame, but the AI would be able to track and predict where your eyes would be, even if they're not in picture, so when they do get in picture, everything would still be in focus. You can also capture up to 4K 120, so all of your slow motion shots would be very crispy. Another feature I use is the ability to upload your LUTs. Usually when you shoot in S-Log3, you would be doing your color grading in post-production. This Sony camera allows you to upload your color grading LUTs directly into the camera, so you can load it and see exactly how it would turn out just like in post-production. The best part is, all of this is packed into such a small form factor. As for configuring the settings for my video, it's actually surprisingly straightforward. The menu settings are easy to use and user-friendly. All I had to do was watch another YouTube video on how to select the correct settings for shooting in S-Log3, and it was pretty much good to go. One of the perks I really enjoy on this camera is the ability to stream what I'm seeing on the camera directly onto my laptop. And this is done through USB-C cable. The output stream is in 4K 30, which is really handy for making sure the lighting and angle is good before you hit the record button. For the lens, I had to buy another Sigma 60mm f1.4 prime lens that is compatible with this Sony E mount. I also bought some extra ND filters, which is pretty much like Sunny's for your camera. This is so I can create that dark, moody background. I've taken this camera out for some outdoor photography and the photos are really good. All the photos I've taken are on automatic setting, and to be honest, it does a really good job for a beginner photographer. Going to videos, the quality is super clean and crisp in 4K 24. If you try to shoot in 4K 120 for your slow motion shots, you will need to buy a V90 SD card. These SD cards are definitely not cheap, as the one I bought was 128GB for about $150. As I'm not a professional photographer or videographer, I put my trust entirely on the automatic setting when I'm outdoor. The video quality on automatic setting did not disappoint. It looks like it was taken by a proper professional camera to an average Joe like me. So if you're running manual on your Sony A6700 and you're worried about not taking a good shot because of your settings, then just set it to automatic and let the camera do its work. So should you upgrade your Canon EOS M50 to the Sony A6700? Well, if your use case is like me where you're just creating indoor talking head videos and you're on a smaller budget, then no. This would be a totally unnecessary upgrade for you. The Canon EOS M50, even though it's old and discontinued, is totally capable of producing good quality videos, especially for YouTube. And viewers generally don't see a difference between 1080p and 4K, so the 4K limitation for the M50 is not that big of a deal breaker for this use case. This Sony A6700 costs about 1.9K here in Australia. Coupled with the Sigma 60mm f1.4 prime lens, you're looking at about 2.5K in total Australian. I would only recommend this Sony camera if you have money to spend and you're looking to future-proof yourself for the next 5 years at least. If you do outdoor photography, videography, or even cinematography, then this camera is for you. In terms of specs, this Sony A6700 is comparable to the FX30, which is used in a lot of cinematography. So when you compare it that way, the A6700 is a really good deal. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this camera and if you agree with my experience. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it insightful for your camera purchase. Thanks for watching.